Hi guys, this is Touch of Sparkle by Monica, and we will be making a Mother's Day project today. It's going to be a little vase full of flowers that can also hold a pair of earrings, some porcelain beads with roses, and some other flowers on them, and then some pink crystal bicones, or actually I think these are the glass bicones that I got. So on the earrings, if you didn't want to use these large bicones, you could use these small rondelles, and you can get those in crystal like Swarovski. You can use glass. I don't know that you can tell on this pink felt here, but I got some that are like a light shade of pink that will coordinate with my rose beads, but I've also got some clear. And then I've got a different shade of pink here with a little bit of purple in it. This is about 1.5 inches of a dangle. If you don't like that much of a dangle, that's where these smaller crystals could come into play. You can also use green. If you want to pick up the green that's in your rose bead, then you could do that, because you know, this is really whatever you think that your mom will enjoy, or yourself. To do the earrings, you're going to need your beads. I have my main focal bead, then I have either the bicones or the little rondelles. Then you're going to need some head pins, and this is different from the eye pin if you've seen some of my other videos, because this is sort of like a nail head. And then you will need your ear wires. These are the French hooks, like a fish hook. And then I have, these are optional, but I have these little 4mm jump rings, because whenever I put my rings on, if it were something that I needed to have front facing at all times, then I would probably opt to do my little jump ring, or to, if I wanted to give it a little bit more movement in my piece. But the ones that I made in here in this card, they don't have the jump rings in there, so you can see it's just fine, because the floral pattern goes all the way around the bead. It's okay if I have some movement where my dangle wants to twist around, because then no matter which way you're looking at it, it's got a floral pattern. Now you'll also need some tools. I have some flat nose pliers, bent nose pliers, round nose pliers, and then I have what is called either nipper tool or flush cutters. And what happens is it's got a flat back, and you get right up close to whatever it is you're trying to trim off, and it gets flat instead of having a little pokey edge like the rounded cutters. I'm going to do one pair that's like what I've got in that card, and I'm going to do the other pair with the smaller crystals here so that you can see what each would look like. And then some little spacer beads. These are 4mm. I like to kind of use that when I want to break up porcelain and crystal, or porcelain and glass, because as they rub together, you could take a chance of chipping your crystal. If this were a Swarovski crystal, you might chip your crystal, or the crystal could scrape away the porcelain. So it's good to have a little buffer. I'm going to take my head pin. The male head of it's going to be facing down. I'm going to put a bicone, a spacer bead, my rose bead, another spacer, a bicone. I've got to finish off my earring, and that's where I'm going to use my round nose pliers to make a loop. I like to do relatively small loops. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way. It just depends on how far down your looping pliers that you go. My pair is more narrow on the end, and it gets wider as you come down towards the base of my tool. The further down your tool you go, the larger your loop is going to be. Now, you want a large loop if you're making a pendant for a necklace, but for earrings, which are supposed to be petite, you want to kind of stay towards the end of your round nose pliers here and create a smaller loop. To give an idea, if you wanted to have a medium-sized loop, like what's on the base of this earring here, that would be not really midway down, but I'd say it'd probably be almost halfway down your pliers to get that size of a loop. I'm going to try to stay right here on the end, and I'm right up against this bicone bead, so I'm going to push it with my thumb to create a 90-degree bend. Then I'm going to reposition my plier and try to stay exactly where I was, because this is where I'm creating my loop. So then I'm taking my finger and pulling that over the top, which creates kind of like a little hook, a little question mark looking thing. Now, you could do two different things. You could then bend this wire back and then use your flush cutters to go in here and cut it off, and then just take round nose pliers to tuck in that end and just have it be a loop like this. Or you could, if you have a longer tail, you could then wrap it around the base. See this little area here? A little bit of room that you can wrap the wire around. The other one that I've got inside that card, I've got it as a wraparound loop. I'm going to make this one just a simple loop here. Now I'm taking my nipper tool or my flush cutters, and I'm coming right up against here, and you want to be sure that that little piece doesn't fly off and hit anybody in the face, so kind of keep your finger on it. Squeeze it, and then with my round nose pliers, I'm going to grab that tip and close the loop. This has a little bit more movement than what I'd like, but because it dangles, everything's going to come to the bottom. The other pair that I made, it wraps around this hook, and it makes the beads not want to move as much because the wire will end right there on top of your top bead, and there's not as much movement. So that's the difference in the simple loop and the wire wrapped loop. So I'm going to make another one just like that. Wanted this rose to face towards you, then I would suggest doing a wire wrapped loop. So we're going to put the earring onto our loop here. Now this is a French style, kind of a fish hook ear wire. There's a little gap right in here, if you can see that, where the little slit is. I'm going to pull that towards myself a little bit to where I have the capability to put my earring on. And also another thing, when you make these simple loops, you want to be sure that your loops are closed after you've cut it with the flush cutters. And if you're at all unsure, just take your flat nose plier and give it a squeeze where it meets. So then I'm going to feed my little earring on, and then with my bent nose pliers, now I'm going to push it away from myself to close that loop back. And it's snug right up against it, so now I don't have the potential of my earring just popping off. This is the second pair of earrings that I'm making. This time I'm going to do a wire wrapped loop, and I'm going to still use the spacers. This time I've got the choice between the little rondelle clear crystal or the rondelle pink crystal. I'm going to go with the pink crystal. So I'm going to pop a little rondelle on there. Still going to use the spacer because this still has the capacity to scratch up the porcelain bead. I like to put another crystal on here though, so I'm going to pop another spacer. And my final pink rondelle. So I've got my little earring made, and see, I've got a lot more space now left as far as the head pin that I can use to do a wrapped loop. Now I'm still going to try to keep it here towards the end of my round nose plier. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to bend it at a 90-degree angle. I'm going to reposition my pliers now to where I am right side up. Then I'm going to take my finger and pull that over my plier so that I have kind of a question mark look. Then I've got to pull that out and reposition now to where my bottom plier is in that little wrap. And since I'm right-handed, I'm going to turn my pliers around, and with my other finger I'm going to pull that end of the wire up underneath here. Because this head pin is a little bit thick, I'm going to turn it around and reposition. I'm going to pull it first with my finger towards the top of that stem. And then I'm going to take my bent nose pliers to help me do the rest of the work, since it's such a thicker wire. So I'm going to take the very tip and I'm going to pull it around. I'm going to constantly be repositioning myself so that I'm on the end here with my plier, able to pull. You want your wraps to be as close as possible. Now I'm just taking my plier and pushing as I squeeze that tip so that I can tuck in that tail at the base. Now I've got that all the way wrapped to the base of this bead here, and there's no movement If you just want it to dangle exactly like that, that's exactly how it's going to stay, because that wire is snug up against your crystal. I like this rose on this side better than this rose. So I'm going to be sure to feed this onto my ear wire to where this is front facing. Speaking of ear wires, here is the nickel plated finish. It's not as bright silver as the other one. Same thing as I did before. I'm going to look for the little opening. Sometimes you'll get them to where the opening is on the back part of your earring, and sometimes they'll be on the front. So you just kind of pull back this little crimping bead that's at the top that kind of jiggles around underneath that spring to see which side your slit is on, and pull that slit up just like you would a jump ring. There's the front of my earring, and the front of my ear wire is the hook part. That's what's going to be seen from your earlobe. So I'm going to then put this little earring on facing that direction, and then take my bent nose pliers and pull that back snug. And I'm going to use my flat nose pliers just to be sure that I've got it push down flat. So there is this wire wrapped earring. So now I'm going to do the other earring. The bright silver pliers, mine are black. If you always want to make the same size loop, take a Sharpie marker and mark that on the ends of your pliers. That way you know exactly where your wire needs to sit to get the size loop that you always want. A lot of wire left and you were already at the base of your bead, you could come in and just trim off the excess, because you don't want to overlap your wire on the beads. This ended perfectly for me. As I'm going to put this on my lovely little earring wire, and I wound up not having to use those little jump rings because the way my loop was, so I don't need a buffer in this jump ring in order to have my design facing front ways. So you can see the difference. So there you have it. There's how to make some lovely little earrings. Make these earrings however you want to, and then pop them into your card, and it's a lovely gift. And you know, what's better at Mother's Day than some rose themed earrings, right? You make your own little vase with the flowers. Be sure to tag me at Sparkle by Monica, and I will be able to see it either on Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, or Facebook. Have a sparkle-rific Mother's Day, y'all!